The key thing to be aware of at the moment is that across most of the world, governments are getting stronger. So in a sense, what happens is the people or the private sector becomes weaker and the government becomes stronger. And so a strong government generally means large government, a lot of cost in running government, and the government consumes a huge amount of money just funding its own operations. And then there are other times in history when the government is small and efficient and weaker, and it is the people or the private sector that are strong. And in those times you find that business and industry and entrepreneurship and things really boom, and we swing between the two over time. It's like a cycle. So at the moment we're in a phase where government is strong. So that means they regulate heavily, means that they're growing. All governments in the Western world are large. It takes a huge amount of money to run a government. And generally what's happening is that the governments have been using more and more debt through various mechanisms to fund the way that they run their operations. And that avenue is not working so well, and so governments are adding more regulations to tap into the wealth and savings of the people. So, for example, in Australia recently, the government accessed all superannuation accounts that hadn't had any activity for a while, and all bank accounts that hadn't seen any activity for a while, and they managed to get 800 million Australian dollars. Wonderful. And in Europe, with Cyprus recently having so much trouble, that the banks in Cyprus were in great difficulty, and it was engineered that between 10 and 40% of people's savings in their bank accounts was taken to be used to fund these insolvent banks. There's talk now in Europe that across the whole of Europe there'll be a special fund set up where the authorities can take 10% of the money in any account, your bank account, your savings account, to use in case there's some, quote-unquote emergency where they have to fund the banks. In France, it's illegal to close down a business. It's illegal to sell gold. There are huge restrictions on moving money, taking money out of the country, and what the government's doing is tracking everything that's going on with the way where their money is. In America, it's been shown that the National Security Agency is tracking all emails, phone calls, and everything. And there's a big uproar about people's privacy, but what they're doing is they're tracking and finding out where all the money is. And Americans have money stored overseas. European countries, other countries are being forced by the USA to reveal that information so that the people that have money overseas can be forced to pay taxes, etc., etc. So just a few examples of how government is trying to get stronger and stronger and stronger. So what this means is that the thing to be aware of here is that where do you have your money? Is it where government can get hold of it? Is it in a bank account being stored in some sort of bank account where if the governments one day just shut the banks down, you would lose access to it? It's how do you actually store the money you have in a way that you have access to it? It's kind of tricky because the government is doing all sorts of things to have access to people's information. So one of those ways is to have gold. I'm not buying gold at the moment. Gold is in a decline. Its price is moving down, and I believe it will continue to do so for another year or so. It's possible that if you bought some gold now, that by the end of this year into next year, it might be worth less than you bought it for. There will come a time. I've read quite a lot. Somebody that I follow quite closely that I like is suggesting that in about halfway through 2015, towards the end of 2015, gold will have its day, and silver, of course, they kick together. And it's tied in very much with how governments are going to be able to fund themselves in another 2 or 3 years. Will they get to the point where it just is so ridiculous that they declare bankruptcy and they go broke? In which case, all assets will decline. So it's actually the use of gold, it seems, is not so much as a protection against inflation, which is what I used to talk about, but it's more a hedge against the insanity of government. And when the Great Depression happened in the United States around 1931, what occurred was that all things devalued. There was a huge depression, which means that the value of all assets, real estate, gold, silver, everything goes down. So what we're really looking to do at the moment is to make sure that the government doesn't get any more than they're entitled to get, which would be your taxation, tax from the work you do, and to see this through until there's a space where things turn around, the cycle reverses so that there is more opportunity for entrepreneurs and people to have businesses and do things like that. So that's kind of where I'm functioning from at the moment. It's not that you can't do stuff. It's not that you can't make a business. It's not that you can't make money. It's that you have to be aware of where government is functioning from and the energy they're functioning from. And they are on a pillage and a burn, and they don't really care whose lives they destroy or what they do. What government is desperately trying to do is to get as much money as it can to continue to be a power. And what that will bring, we will see. It's probably not going to be all that pleasant. And it's interesting too that if you look around the world, the unemployment rates generally are rising, and unemployment with youth is incredibly high. 40% in areas of Europe, 60% in places like Spain. 60% of youth are unemployed, can't get a job, never worked. And one of the cures for unemployment in youth in particular is war. And I wonder, are we heading towards that? And will that be lots of young people being conscripted and sent off to war? I'm not sure. But certainly in the past, that has been one of the ways that government has responded to public unrest, high unemployment and difficulty, is to go to war. And what happens with that is a huge amount of money is injected into the system, and a whole bunch of industry jumps up to supply the war effort. And a lot of people are conscripted, so that handles all of the unemployment and the public unrest. And we're seeing plenty of unrest in countries like Greece and Spain and Brazil. It's really quite remarkable. So, as to your question about buying gold, I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you that I'm probably going to sell some of my gold. I will keep some. I'm going to keep an eye on it and watch it, and maybe in another 12 months or so, review that and possibly buy some more then. But it's possible that gold could go down to below $1,000. It's currently sitting around $1,200 to $1,300 range US for an ounce. If you bought it now and it went down to $1,000, you're down a couple of $100. I guess if your outlook is long and you can see this going, if you're seeing yourself holding gold for quite a long time, perhaps your whole life, then this little bit of noise that's going on wouldn't be an issue. But I would suggest that if you were patient and watch and be aware, that you probably get your gold and your silver at a better price. And that's what I'm doing. So I hope that's useful, and that's all I've got on it right now.